Hi everyone, welcome to the Doorbell channel. I decided to be a little bit more comfy today, but I'm still over at the Prettiest Pieces in Greensboro, North Carolina. So if you are anywhere near here and you need rentals for a wedding or event, they are your go-to folks. I love them. I'll link them below. And today we are going to talk about taking the plunge from a quote normal job into full-time small business ownership. So if you're somewhere in the middle, been doing your business for a little while but not sure if you're ready to take the plunge into full-time, this is the video for you. So this is mostly going to be directed at someone leaving like a normal or desk job for owning your own business. It's going to have a little focus on creative businesses, of course, but should apply to anyone who is leaving your typical desk job. So first of all, let's just take a moment to celebrate that you're here, that you're thinking about taking the plunge, that you're thinking about taking the plunge, or that you're almost ready to go full time. So this is a huge moment. We're so excited for you. I remember being in this exact same spot, so I just want to take a moment to celebrate all the progress you've made and just remind you this is a huge deal. So exciting. All right, on to the business side of things. So I told you last week how I worked a ton of jobs before going full-time with Design by Lainey, and the one that was paying the bills the whole time was I was working for AT&T. So I had, I was working out of the home for the most part, but I was visiting clients 8 to 5. I worked a lot of late hours. I worked a lot of weekends, and it was pretty high pressure. I had sales quotas, team, the whole gig. So when I started doing wedding planning on the side and also Design by Lainey on the side, I was just dying. I got to a point about 2 years in that I just couldn't handle it anymore. Everything in my life was suffering. You may be at this point and realizing that you can't sustain both things for a long time. And isn't it Ron Swanson who says, don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. So I just kind of had to be honest with myself that it was time to whole-ass Design by Lainey, and that's what I'm doing ever since. So right when I started wedding planning, I made it a 5-year plan to leave AT&T because I knew that I was finding more fulfillment out of this creative industry. So I made it a 5-year plan. This was in 2013, and I ended up actually leaving AT&T in 2016. So this was only about 3 years into my 5-year plan, which is really great. I'm a very risk-averse, cautious person, so I had to plan everything perfectly. Some of you may have quit even a year earlier than I did in the same situation. So I was very lucky. If you know the full story, I was the luckiest person on earth to kind of get caught in a layoff position right when I was about to quit anyway. So it gave me a little cushion, pushed me out the door a couple months earlier, but I was already in the full planning stages I ended up leaving in November, and I was planning to quit in February or March anyway. Actually, as part of that planning process, I went a little bit nuts. I canceled Netflix, I canceled my gym membership. I thought that I was not going to travel ever again. I told my parents I wasn't coming home for the next year. I planned to not put any money into my retirement account for a whole year. I thought I was going to be totally broke when I first started out, and just went, full on save mode, no spending on any frivolous expenses. And it turned out that since I've been planning for quite a while, that was a little extreme. So if you follow some of the steps we're going to talk about today, you probably can keep your Netflix account for now. So there's a few things that you are definitely going to need before going full time. There's a few things that are going to be somewhat nice to have, and then there's a few things that you just kind of need to ask yourself and be honest with yourself about. So we'll go through those 3 categories, and let me know if you have any questions at the end. First of all, there are a few things that you absolutely need before going full-time, and I will tell you that there are people who have made it who didn't do these things, but if you ask me, if you don't have these things, you're not ready to go full-time yet. So the first thing is knowing who you are as a business, and I think this is just the basic, most important thing you can do for your business is just understanding who you are. So this is as simple as having a name picked out and a logo, as well as understanding your niche, what you offer, and having set branding and set goals for your business. So if you don't have these things, take some time, be a little thoughtful about it, and decide where you want to be as a business. The second thing you need before going full-time is a contract. If you don't have a contract, in my opinion, you're still in what my parents call jobby mode. You're not in job mode. So you're somewhere between job and hobby, but what really is going to separate you is that contract. And if you're not using a contract with all your services, then you're not protecting yourself, your business, any of your assets, any of your dependents, or anything else about your business. So you gotta have a contract in place, and unfortunately, you just gotta spend the money to hire a lawyer to get this done. I had a contract for a while that wasn't looked over by a lawyer, and it's not to say that was bad, and I was very fortunate that nothing ever happened, but then you have to get someone to look it over as a lawyer. And there are a bunch of contracts for creative businesses in the contract shop, or I think the Law Tog also has some contracts that you can get. So those are two resources for you that I can link below. So the third thing that you're going to need is savings. And I know this is something that a lot of people ask me questions about all the time when they're trying to go full time. So I recommend about 3 to 6 months savings, and this is just going to depend somewhat on your state in life as well as your current budget. So I told you I was very cautious and very risk averse, so I wanted to have at least 6 months savings, and also I knew that being honest with myself, if I wasn't doing as well as I could in about 3 months, that I would start looking for another part-time job to supplement my income. So I recommend 3 to 6 months savings, but again, if you have children, if you have parents you're taking care of, if you have mortgages, those things, then those numbers might change. So you also need a basic game plan. So this kind of goes along with knowing who you are as a business, but it's more about how you're going to act. So you need to know how much money you need to make every month. You need to know how you're going to get clients. You need to know who your ideal client is, and you need to know what other people in your business are doing. So these are really important questions that you have to ask yourself. So you need to make sure you understand what your day is going to look like as a business owner, what your month's going to look like as a business owner, and honestly what your next 5 years are going to look like as a business owner. You also need insurance. I don't have a ton of liability insurance on my business itself, but as a self-employed person, you do need to have health insurance, and that's something that was actually a bit of a hurdle for me going through this whole process. So make sure you have a plan for insurance. If you're married and your spouse has a normal job still, then you probably will be able to get on their health plan, but with the marketplace changing as it is, just make sure you figure that out beforehand. So number 6 is a business license or permit. This is very important. It separates you from those jobbies or those hobbies, and this is how you're gonna pay your taxes. This is how you're gonna be acknowledged as a business. This is how you get accounts for wholesaling. This also can include like a tax ID and a resale license if you are in a field where you need that. And another thing that you're going to need before going full-time is a budget and cost structure. So you need to know how much you spend as an individual and how much you spend as a business. So what you're going to need to make to actually keep running. And this can change those cutbacks. You may have some expenses that you can cut back on for a little while to help out with this before you're making, the full salary again. Or depending on what your business is, you may never make your full salary that you were at your normal job, or you may be making more than that very quickly. So it just depends on your business, but you need to understand how much money you need and where that money is coming from. So one thing that I did that was really helpful, I kind of said that I wanted to make $6,000 a month gross revenue. And so this is before taxes and before expenses, but this was kind of what I needed just to keep everything afloat and not really dip into my savings. And so if you divide that out, that's either $200 every day or $300 every business day. And so I kind of thought about it every day. It's not that I beat myself up if I didn't make $300 on a Tuesday, but I kind of kept in my head that I was doing something every day that was going to make that $300. So either I had already gotten that $300 previously and I was doing the work for it, or I actually brought in, a new client or did some marketing that would bring in a new client. So I was able to directly correlate that money a little bit and think about my day-to-day structure. What had I done today to make my $300? So that actually really helped me out on a very basic level, and it's still something that I think about all the time. And in the wedding industry, this is all seasonal. So if you are in the wedding industry, you'll see that there are ups and downs, and it might take you a couple years to figure that out. I'm still not even 100% because I'm on year 3 of my business. So I'm still not 100% confident because the ebbs and flows have been a little bit different every year as my business has changed. So this is something where you could rely on a mentor or someone else in your field to ask them a little bit about the cyclical nature of your income. And you also may want to revise your contracts a little bit. So I accept 50% payment up front and 50% before it's due, but that actually puts a lot of money in certain months and not a lot and almost no money in certain other months. So kind of thinking of ways to bring in passive income or to separate the payments out a little bit. I know some people who do 3 or 4 payments, so they still have steady income during some of those slower months. And the last thing that you need before going full-time is a website. And you may want to argue that your business may not, and I'm sure there's someone out there that could argue that would get me to agree, but almost every business out there these days needs a website. It was honestly the number one thing that made me feel official and that made me feel full-time. And I didn't get mine out until the exact day that I went full-time. So I had a lot of help. I was rearranging this website every day for a month, and I hated everything about it. And one day I just kind of was like, okay, it's got to be out there. It's got to be out there. And then a month later, I redid the entire thing, which is more like how it is now. But I think you just need a website because you can refer clients there. You can put on your business cards. You can link to it. This is how you're going to be tracking all your views, all your traffic from, from Pinterest, from Instagram, from wherever you're getting traffic. I know there's a lot of different sources out there for different types of businesses. But I think that if you haven't gotten a website together yet, then that's the next project on your list. So just to review those things, you need to have a clear understanding of who you are as a business. You have to have a contract. You have to have savings to, keep you afloat in case you aren't 100% at first. You have to have a game plan of where you're going to get your clients and your income. You have to have insurance, business licenses or permits, which will vary by industry, budget and cost structure, and website. So those are 8 things that you're going to absolutely need before going full-time. And if you haven't gotten those things yet, then I definitely encourage you to take a little bit more time. All of these things can be accomplished in 3 or 4 months at most if you really put your dedication to it. So a few things that are kind of nice to have, but obviously not required, and this is going to depend on industry. So just a couple things here that I wanted to touch on. So part-time steady income is something that a lot of people do. So when someone decides they want to become a photographer full-time, maybe they'll get a little part-time job at a different company. I know a bunch of planners who started out as venue managers and were managing events at a venue, but also planning events on the side as well. So if that's something that you feel more comfortable with, if you're more risk averse and you need to have some kind of steady income, that can also help you with those benefits and that kind of thing. So for me, I was very much, thinking that if I didn't end up making all the money that I wanted to, I would end up getting a job at Panera or something like that, just to, not even in the industry necessarily, just to supplement that income. I also kind of recommend, if you're really trying to put full force into your business, I kind of recommend getting something that's totally different, like Panera or being a bartender or something like that, because that will encourage you to eventually quit that job. Whereas if you start at a company that's in an industry that interests you or similar to where you want to be, you may kind of get complacent with that steady income and you may never take the plunge. So I know a ton of people who have done it and have done a really great job, but for me personally, I felt like it would be best if I was just doing it for the income, to do it just for the income, get something totally different that I definitely wasn't going to fall in love with and be passionate about, so that I would come back to being full-time with my business. So another thing that you might want to think about is having a dedicated office space. A lot of people like to work outside the home. We are going to talk soon about working from home effectively, which is something that I've been doing since I just started work after college. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about this. Some people share studio spaces, some people have co-working spaces in their cities, and some people like to work at home. And you don't even need a dedicated space. I know plenty of people who work in their living room and do an amazing job, and especially if you're doing something that's very digitally focused, you may just need a desk with a computer on it. I personally make a huge mess every time I do any kind of art, so I need the full room. But keep in mind what you're going to need and make the arrangements as you need to. So another thing would be I put more savings, just because I want to emphasize I'm kind of risk averse. Not everything goes exactly according to plan. So I said 3 to 6 months savings. If you are more risk averse, if you're more comfortable having a larger safety net, then it's never going to be a bad thing to have a little bit more savings. Tax ID, resale license, I kind of touched on that. Any permits or licenses, certifications that you need for your industry, this is going to vary a little bit, but make sure you budget in the time to go get those before you start your business, because that's just going to make you feel more official. If your first client asks you about a tax ID or something and you have no idea what you're talking about, then they're going to notice and you're going to have trouble getting that first client to book. Another thing that you probably want to think about is startup capital, and this will vary a lot by industry. So I did post a blog post a few months ago where I interviewed several business owners in the wedding industry, and most everyone said that it took less than $5,000 of capital to start their business. This is great news for us. However, not every industry is like this. I have a friend who started his own manufacturing company from scratch, and several friends that have started apps and had to get seed money in a lot of different places. So this can take tons of time. This can take years depending on what you need and where you're getting it from. So make sure you budget in anything that you'll need startup capital wise, and this can include that equipment that we talked about. Any permits or certifications are also going to cost money, and especially if you want to be in a brick and mortar location, this is going to take a little bit more money as well. So just think about what kind of capital you might need. I was lucky in the stationery industry that it doesn't take a ton of capital to start up, and there's not a whole lot of investments that you have to make at the very beginning. So those are a few things that you're going to need or that you might want to have before starting a small business and quitting your normal job. But I also wanted to just raise a few questions. These are more just things to consider, things to ask yourself, and the number one thing I can tell you is just to be fully honest with yourself. So if you say that you're going to quit after a year if you don't make a certain amount of money, then if that year comes and you didn't, even if you're $2 short from that, you need to have that honest conversation with yourself. And that doesn't mean you necessarily have to quit, but you need to revise things. If things aren't going the way that you want them to, then you need to be fully honest and prepared to deal with any changes that you might need to make to your business to make it as successful as you want it to be. So the first thing is really tough to talk about. It's a failure plan. And this is so, so important. So you need to ask yourself how long you're going to give this business. You need to ask yourself how much money you need to make absolutely to survive. This is going to change based on, if you have kids, there's going to be a lower failure point than if you're just a single person with no mortgage. So I was very, very open to the idea of failing, perhaps a little bit too scared I was going to fail throughout my whole first year. And to be honest, 50% of new businesses in the US don't make it to the 5-year mark, and I'm only at the 3rd year. So I still have 2 more years to go before I'm even going to feel anywhere near confident in the business. And with small business ownership, you never know what's going to happen. A ton of wedding industry folks were really affected by the recession because the wedding industry is not extremely recession proof, and people stop spending money on weddings when they don't have a lot of extra income. So you have to be honest with yourself of a very short-term failure plan, as well as in the long term, what level your business needs to maintain in order to be considered successful and for you to keep doing it. So another thing you need to ask yourself is your ideal client. So we already talked a little bit about your game plan for going out and getting clients, but just understanding fully who that person is. More than saying, 25-year-old female, you need to say, that they're engaged, that they like shopping at this place, that they like to eat this type of food, that they love to do this on weekends. You need to kind of have this very, very clear understanding. I've written a lot of short stories and things in my day. I was an English major, so I kind of think of it as this character development, and you need to develop your ideal client as a full character. in your mind, because that's going to help you understand who they are, how to find them, what sets them apart from other clients, and what areas to look in to find more of them. So you also need to think about your work schedule and your hours. Can be part of your game plan, but think about when you want to be working. It might seem awesome working from home, and we'll talk about this more in the work from home video, but you got to have set work hours. Just because you're working from home and owning a business, or working from your own studio and owning your own business, doesn't mean that you get to just work whenever you want to. So setting business hours and talking about when you want to work is going to be a huge step towards making that official. So a lot of people do start their own business because they want to be home with their children, or because they have some commitments outside of work that they want to focus more time on, and that's fine. So if you don't want to work on Mondays and Fridays, you don't have to. I'm not going to tell you anything, but just think about that. Be open with yourself up front about when you're willing to work, and be strict with that throughout the whole process. Especially when you're first starting out, even if you don't have a ton of client work that you're doing, you still need to be in your office space, doing marketing, doing admin, getting everything set up on the front end, so that when those clients start rolling in, it's not this huge awakening for you. So another thing is to be very cognizant of what type of business you're going to be. So there's a bunch of different types out there. I'm a sole proprietorship because it's just me. I don't have a ton of liability. I don't have a ton of assets. I don't have anyone really depending on me at this point in my life. But if you do have children, if you do have mortgages, property, assets, those kind of things, then you might want to think about incorporating. There's a few different options for this, especially if you're starting a business with someone else. You'll want to be maybe a partnership or an LLC. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. Feel free to research the different types. Make sure you're fully aware of what effect that's going to have on you personally if something does go south, but also if everything goes north. I don't know if that's an expression, but if everything goes well, make sure it's going to be the best type of business for you. So another really important thing is knowing your competition and what sets you apart. So this is going to be important so you can figure out why someone would choose you over someone else. So say someone's getting a proposal from 2 different companies for the same service. Why are they going to choose you? You have to have a reason. There has to be something there that sets you apart from the rest of the competition. And in some cases, you might be doing something that's completely unique, and there's not a direct competition out there. In stationery, there's tons of competition out there, and I am open to all of it. None of it ever bothers me, because I know that I am unique, and I know that I have certain factors that other people don't. So understand your competition, check them out, look at their websites, see how they're doing things, because that's going to be one of your best tools when you're moving forward to learn how you should do things and how people expect things to run in your industry. And feel free to totally subvert everything they're doing and turn the industry up on its head. I know a ton of people who've done that and have been so successful. And the last thing, which might be the most important thing we talk about all day, is asking yourself why you want to do this in the first place. So starting your own business, leaving a desk job, sounds exciting and fun. We millennials are all about it, but it's so much hard work. If you ask me if you're ready to make the plunge, I typically send 45 reasons why it sucks working for yourself, and at the end I say, but it's the best thing ever and you'll never regret it. And that's truly how I feel. The day-to-day is tough. It's a struggle, and every single mistake is 100% on your shoulders all the time. However, it can also be the most rewarding experience of your life. So if you have the right reasons, if there's something important that you're hoping to accomplish in the world, if there's something that you want to bring to the world, if there's just something that you need to satisfy within yourself by being full-time and by opening your own business, then go for it. Remember those reasons. Write those reasons down on a piece of paper and put them in front of you. If those reasons are to show your children that you can, if those reasons are to satisfy some creative need inside of you, if those reasons are just to have a better schedule and stop killing yourself for work, then write that down. Remember all the things that you didn't love working in a desk job, and remember those every single day. Read them every single day, because that's going to keep you focused, it's going to keep you sustainable, and it's going to remind you why you did this in the first place. So no matter where you are in your business, in your life, I don't believe anyone should make the plunge without thinking about it for at least 4 to 6 months. Most businesses, like I mentioned, don't make it past the 5-year mark, and I'm a firm believer in long-term goals and planning. Don't hurt your chances by jumping in too quickly. As someone who's been there are absolutely days that I really miss having a good health insurance plan, a nice steady desk job, regular salary, maybe even just other people to chat with and have lunch with every day. So enjoy it while you're putting all these pieces into place, and using all these steps that we talked about to put them into action to take the plunge. Comment below to let us know where you are in this process, and we'd be happy to give you some helpful feedback wherever we can. And make sure you join us next week on the Doorbell channel, because we're going to have our first live guest, and I'm so excited about it. Thanks, everybody. Have such a great day.